For a long time now, there have been groups that have tried to introduce women's professional hockey into the market, and for whatever reason, it has never seemed to succeed. They are trying to find a viable, sustainable business model. It has just been a challenge that no one has been able to figure out right now. Now the National Women's Hockey League is coming to Canada. Can this work? Let's dive down that rabbit hole. Women's hockey, you would think women's professional hockey should be a natural in this country. We do great in the Olympics. The ratings are high in the Olympics. Hockey is one of our national sports. Yet somehow when it comes to professional women's hockey, it just hasn't been able to find a path. Steve Milton, is there one? Is there one to success?
I think there is, and I'll go back to everything. It's why the CPL, I think, will succeed. We don't now because the virus has got a bit in the way of that, but why it's extremely, in today's world, difficult to start a new league. I mean, really, really difficult. You can see with something that seems like a slam dunk like spring football in the U.S., how difficult that is. But there is a path, and it takes this, money.
It all takes money.
Money.
Yeah.
Because you've got to be able to absorb losses while you figure out what mistakes you make, it takes an awful lot of ground. You got to sell every ticket about 7 times. And that's let alone going to TV. And you probably aren't going to go to TV because TV's not going to take you until you're ready to be on TV. There is a path, though. I'm encouraged a little bit by the one in Canada here. There seems to be a bit of money behind this, real money for the first time. And there's been sponsorship. I'd be encouraged a little bit, but it's a long, slow build. And you can't get discouraged. And money stops you from being discouraged.
You agree, Bubba?
Well, I don't know what is successful. I mean, and I'm not being sarcastic, but what is successful? Is it 10,000 people per game? Is it 5,000 people per game? Do we compare it to the Ontario Hockey League, or is there an expectation that it will be like the National Hockey League one day? I do believe there's interest in it. I believe there's a niche crowd there. You have a growing amount of females that are participating at a younger age that are interested in watching hockey heroes of the female, of female hockey players. But I'm just not sure what successful is, because I think if you believe that it's going to mirror the National Hockey League, you're dreaming. But I think, again, you can get corporate sponsorship. I think they're all on board. The national sports networks are interested in promoting this. But as we always say in so many occasions, ticket sales will really determine how successful this league will be.
Bubba, I think successful, if you ask a lot of the women who play, would be we want to be able to play professional hockey and make enough money that we don't have to work another job. Not NHL money, just not, $50, $60, $70, $80,000 a year for salaries.
Well, no, Scott, but I understand what you're saying there. That's for the athlete side of things. But I'm talking about the league being successful. And that, again, is people, when you're scanning the crowd, that it's not half empty, or that you're going to play it at ACC and there's only 5,000 people there. And you know, and we all know that when we look at sports, and the optics don't look good when there's empty seats. So I just don't know what successful is.
It's staged. Success, sorry, Rick, wouldn't you agree? Maybe you don't, Rick, but I think success comes in stages. Survival is the very first survival, and speaking to what Scott said, so people can play on their own and dedicate their whole lives to it, as all pro athletes must, is in the first stage. So what you're talking about might be the second, third, fourth stage, Rick. But
yeah, I mean, there's so many measures of success. Is it financial success? Is it longevity? Is this league going to be around for a while? Is it seeing players develop and get better and become stars on the league stage and the international stage? Is it that the league makes money? I think all of that the curve is very steep in terms of the financial success, the longevity, as we've seen with many different leagues from years gone by, even those down south, and the NFL copycats, whether it was the XFL that recently died a quick death or whatnot. The measure of success is going to be different. At the end of the day, there's going to have a league commissioner or a group of owners that have not only have deep pockets, but are willing, as you mentioned, Steve, to absorb those losses. They need sponsorships to jump on board. They need broadcasters, plural, to jump on board as well. And once you have that, and once you've done it for a number of years, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's 5,000, maybe it's 10,000 in terms of a fan base for each game. That remains to be seen. But you need all of those, you need the foundation to be laid before you can do anything.
But Rick, by every definition of success that you just gave, and there were a number there, financial or crowds or whatever else, by every definition, the attempts at women's professional leagues before have not succeeded. Why not?
That's a great question. You mentioned internationally, Canada versus U.S. We're all glued to the TV or listening to the radio or reading the recap of the newspaper the day after, going online to get the latest stats or seeing the great stories that have been told by these athletes and coaches and support staff. It just hasn't transitioned to a club level, and that is a huge question because we cheer these ladies on when they're at the international stage. Why aren't we doing it at the club level? It's one of the biggest mysteries, I think.
I'll go back to what I said earlier. That's hard to start a whole league, and that's why maybe starting one team in Toronto is a little. I mean, it was much harder for the CPL. I'm going to go back to that again to start than it was for let's say TFC because there was an already existing league. So within previous incarnations of the leagues, there were levels of success. Pockets of success, Calgary and Montreal being the two that jump to mind. And in terms of players and on the ice success, not necessarily in the crowd, so the Toronto team, Arrows, I think it was, right? I went to a few of those games. One of the problems in Toronto is it's not a hockey town. It's a Leaf town. It was marginally, I would say, a junior town for the World Juniors, but that almost approaches the level of the NHL because it's hype in it. That's a whole different thing. There aren't good arenas in Toronto. It's made. This thing looks like it's made for a 5,000 to 7,000 seat arena. There are two of them in Toronto, both within 5 miles of each other. One in Brampton, one in Mississauga, and they're both horrible venues, not in terms of the building, but in terms of the reach in the area. Total. Like you almost can guarantee it's not going to do well in either one of those.
Unless there's one other. Steve, there's one other arena that you forgot.
Yeah,
about,
of course.
Which would be the Coca-Cola Arena, which is the
Exactly.
Marlins Arena, which would mean the Leafs would have to be involved and the NHL would have to be involved, which, Bubba, is the dream and the underlying suggestion behind all this. Why doesn't the NHL jump on board?
Well, I think because they're interested in making money, as any business would be. I mean, I don't think they're interested in a lost leader, perhaps for a couple of years, but this has to be a viable business that makes money, that they can promote, that people are going to accept. And it just seems to me, and again, I'm not trying to be negative Nelly here, but I'm just going from past history. And I know, Steve, you talked about the CPL, but that to me still hasn't proven itself. That was 1 year. It was an amazing, fantastic year for that league. But again, we need to see something sustaining for 5 to 10 years at the very least. And I think for some reason, when these ladies throw on the Canadian jersey, well, there's automatic interest there because you have the Canadian-American rivalry on the ice for the ladies is just something special and fantastic, and we're all very attracted to it. But that seems to come every second year or every fourth year. We're talking about something that at the minimum should be a 25-game league. Are you willing to put down money? And to me, this is the bottom line. Are people willing to put down money for season tickets, regular tickets, to show up and support this league every single game in how many cities, whether it be the Calgary Infernos or whoever these teams are? It hasn't proven itself. So I'm a little bit leery of this working on a long-term financial basis.
But Rick, wouldn't it work though, Rick, if you had the NHL behind it, like the WNBA had with the NBA? Wouldn't it work if the NHL said, look, we will prop you up for 3 or 4 or 5 years until some traction is gained?
I've always had the thought that this would only work at a club level if the NHL was involved for two reasons. There's soon going to be 32 teams in the National Hockey League when Seattle jumps on board next season. Why not have the owners of each division, so you have 8 owners in each division, pool their money together, and that is Team A. Wherever you want to base it, whatever you want to call it, that is Team A. You can have 4 teams in this league to start. That's how you roll it out. You sign a 5-year package deal to say, hey, this is our financial support for these 5 years. The NHL already has sponsors. They can build that into the package. These women will be paid much better than they were with the old CWHL. That's one thing to consider. The other thing that not many people talk about, and Steve mentioned it off the top, is it's so hard to launch a league nowadays. Think of the NHL in the early days. It was born out of the NHA. The NFL wasn't as huge as it was on day one. Neither was the CFL or the NBA. So these leagues, especially nowadays, where there's so much more to entertain yourself with, not right now, but you know what I mean? There's so many distractions sports-wise that it's so hard to launch a league and then sustain it.
Well, that's true. And let's go back to I would like to go back to the NHL for 1 second here. When I talked about stages, that would be in around stage 3. Now, we all, I think, have met Gary Bettman. I've known him fairly well for about 30 years, at least on a professional level. And people in Hamilton aren't going to like to hear this, but this is one sharp dude. And he can see ahead. But he wants to do this. He wants this to happen. But what the NHL under Bettman has always been afraid of is embarrassment. They never used to be afraid of being embarrassed. And they're not afraid of it. They just don't want to be, right? So everything, you take a look at anything that comes close to wanting to embarrass them, they just slam in a second. And they don't want in this situation to be they need to know that there's a germ of something there. Then if they take over, all the arguments you guys have been making are however the structure of that is very true. It will really help. One of the reasons Bettman wants this is the broader the base in hockey, and you're going to probably increase fandom on this one because you could get a whole bunch of people who aren't fans now because they're hockey moms and dads of female players. They don't necessarily they're in it because their daughters like it, right? Just like soccer was, and then parents got interested in soccer. Just like football was for a lot of people, and then their parents got interested in football, basketball, those kinds of things. You broaden that base, it's really good. Anything that's good for hockey in general is good for the NHL.
Can I say this?
You know what? Go ahead, Bubs.
Sorry, and I know this is a word that we've been throwing around all week because in our CFL discussions, and that's cultural. Yep. The cultural thoughts of sport. In the United States, the WNBA works to me because people are watching women's basketball at the college level. And it translates well into the professional league because, one, you've seen these people play in the college ranks. The college basketball is huge. Like, I mean, look at the Ionescu getting, one of the greatest women's player we've ever seen. There's all kinds of interest of her playing with Kia Nurse on the New York Liberty. That's a big story in the United States. Here in Canada, our best players are not playing in the U Sports level. They're gone to play for Ohio, or they're gone to play with Wisconsin or North Dakota. They're out of sight, out of mind. So if they come back to Canada for a league that will be mostly Canadian teams, how can we identify? And I know there's storytelling, but again, I've said this before, out of sight, out of mind. And plus our cultural acceptance of college sports, to me, just isn't here like it is in the United States. So I think that's a big challenge for the growth of a women's hockey league compared to the WNBA.
CFL faces that as well.
Yeah,
they don't have that marketing tool of the Canadian colleges, even though the players are really, 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 really good, way better than they used to be. But yeah, they found something. Your point is extremely well taken there. That said, I think that's why this has to be a groundswell thing from the bottom up. You've got to go door to. You got to get people in the rink, because we've all been to the games. I mean, they had the national midget tournament here, women's midget tournament here in Dundas, 4 or 5 years ago. It was incredible. I've been to 3 finals of the Olympics in the 3 years when Canada women and men have won it at the same time. At the same one, I've been to each of the 3 games, and other than the Crosby goal. And it had to be a Crosby goal in overtime on the very last second of our most successful, I would say almost most successful cultural endeavor ever in this country, which was the Vancouver Olympics. It had to be that to be better than the women's game. The other 2, the women's game was far superior, and I would rather have been there. There's a different atmosphere. There's a different pitch because of the just who's in the crowd watching, and the excitement level is incredible. I've never seen any excitement level like Salt Lake when the women won.
Yeah, the other way the NHL can help out this, and this is a shout out to NHL PR, is if they want to take this on and have one team per NHL division, they could play these games before actual NHL games. A lot of games in the States on the weekends are in the afternoons, so maybe have 3 10-minute periods for the women's game, have it before the NHL game, and maybe you win prizes or tickets to an NHL game or a future women's game, and that's the way I think they can build up that publicity.
Rick, it's been mentioned a couple times here already that you have to put people in the seats. Is there I don't want to put this on women to have to buy tickets. It shouldn't be a girls only or a women only thing. But why have women not? I mean, you would argue potentially that it's a lot of women arguing we want equality with our league. We want women to have pro opportunities. And then you would say, okay, are you in the stands supporting it when it's there and you don't see that? Is there, I don't want to say blame, but are you surprised that there hasn't been more people there already, even as just a show of support, even if you're not a fan?
Well, you've seen many women and their children. I think that's the basis of it. Is there's a woman who has a son or a daughter who wants to take them out to this event just to say, hey, there's another league. There's people that you can look up to if you have a young daughter who has aspirations of becoming a hockey star. But yeah, I thought there would be a lot more of that. But then again, maybe there's other things to do. I'm sure there's other things to do, and they're just not interested in the sport, period.
Well, a part of it's been getting it out there. There's an identification thing going here too as well. And you can't identify if you don't get to see it. So this is all part, again, going back to you got to market it. You got to sell every ticket 7 or 8 times, but get people in the rink. Women players have been traditionally, those that have played, much better at connecting with the fans, even no matter what level they're playing at, that the men have over time. And part of that is, I don't know whether it's because it's been a bigger deal in the men's side, but that connection, that, hey, there's somebody like me, potentially like me, as I think you're implying there, Rick, is part of it. And that means getting the people there in the first place. And there just hasn't been the publicity, the number of things, the longevity of it, a good rink to go to, in Toronto's case, all of those types of thing. There's a lot of factors here, and that's why it's a slow build, and that's why you got to have money, because you got to get the biggest thing here is going to have the sales task to go out and knock on doors and get to the local associations.
Unless the NHL. Bubs, let me throw one.
Not right away. It won't happen.
Let me throw one more thing at you, Bubs, and that is this. It was probably, 25 years ago that the CFL was really struggling, and TSN came along and did their Friday Night Football, and they built, I don't think there's any argument, TSN built the CFL into what it is, and it's probably still around because of TSN and what they did on their Friday nights. TSN right now doesn't have NHL hockey because Sportsnet got the contract. You would see, I would think, an opportunity here to say, look, we did something with the CFL. We took a league that was teetering and turned it into something that is compelling. Same with the World Junior Tournament. They did that with the World Junior Tournament. Why has TV not looked at this and said, we've got this opportunity, we've got a template for how we can take a league that isn't much and turn it into something? Why has that not happened?
Well, I think I'm going to compare this to what we're seeing in U Sports and why they're struggling right now with a television contract. And at CHCH, we do 1 game a year. CHCH used to have a game of the week, but to produce a game cost at a bare minimum $1 million. And our teams, our people going to be able, or companies going to support the television stations, TSN, Globe Bell, Globe Media, Rogers with Sportsnet, to absorb these types of losses to produce games, and a staff, and of course the broadcasters, the cameras, all of that involved. Like I said, $1 million a game to give you that game of the week in terms of women's hockey. Is it sustainable? I mean, because at the end of the day, not so much even people in the seats, but are people going to watch on television? There's a ratings aspect to this as well. There has to be some reward for the television station to do this. And you're right, TSN has done a marvelous job in producing, but that's professional football. They did a great job of taking the World Juniors from CBC but turning that into an annual 2-week watch tournament. Again, we've talked about this, all 4 of us, longevity. Is it there? for this league in terms of making this viable on TV. It has to be viable financially for it to work on TV, and at this point, that's yet to prove itself.
Very quickly, as we wrap up here, go around the box here. Will the National Women's Hockey League work in Toronto? Yes or no? Steve Milton.
Boy, I'm really ambivalent on this one. If it's yes or no, I would have to say yes with caveats.
Rick Zamprin?
I really hope so. I'm going to say yes, but I want to see it. Let's do it, ladies.
Bob O'Neill?
I certainly hope so, because I think the product is good and the quality of hockey is as good as we've ever seen it before. But again, I'm on a wait and see sadly, you gotta prove it, and people have to watch.
So it's unanimous. We all hope that it works. I'm doubtful. Unless the NHL or some other big money group gets involved and props it up, I'm unfortunately I'm doubtful. But as I say, we all hope it will. What about you watching? Do you believe the National Women's Hockey League or any professional women's league will work without the NHL involved? Our Twitter's on the screen. Our Twitter's going to follow afterwards. Give us a note. Get in touch. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.